They put on a wonderful display of flowers, and I love flowers.
Our lovely designer gardens are just a delight.
Gardening is for everybody. Even growing fruit and veg in a small area like this is hugely possible.
The demand for allotments over the last 5 years has increased exponentially.
This year we've got 5 very different show gardens.
These are really quite unusual water butts.
This is the oldest flower show in the UK and the second oldest in the world.
We're permaculture, so we grow a diverse selection of plants. So there's perennials, there's annuals that we grow. We even have a bit of tulips in the spring. So this is a good representation of what grows. I didn't have horticulture background until now. I wanted to find another career. I got into gardening maybe 7 years ago, and then I had to retrain for this. I went to college. Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I would go for my Rudbeckia Sahara. I like them. They come out vintage, they look aged, and yet they're fresh. Very Van Gogh.
The resurgence of traders in our floral market is really great to see, because after COVID it took a while to get started again, and we're really happy with how many traders we've got in there.
What have you seen which is really interesting?
In the floral marquee, the things that people grow, the cacti, I don't particularly like them, but the varieties are absolutely wonderful. And I always like to see the display put on by a local nursery called Monkton Elm, because they put on a wonderful, real picturesque display.
We are one of the main sponsors of the Taunton Flower Show. We are really proud to be associated with it. There's a real tradition with the show, being one of the oldest horticultural flower shows in the country. And it's our great pleasure to introduce this garden this year, which is all about the feelings and emotions that the garden can bring to you. We start planning soon after Chelsea. We see what's current at Chelsea and then make sure we choose something different. This is our hearty garden, sparkling positivity, so everything's nice and vibrant. We've got the lovely piano in there as a talking point. We've got the water and all the vibrant colours. And this is a fairly new David Austin rose called Tottering by Gently. It's a single yellow, very, very good as a pollinator. We're calling this one Tranquility. It's aimed at an area in the garden where you just want to sit down quietly for contemplation. Everything is muted colours. You've got the water feature, which is just burbling away. You've got the lovely tree ferns and the soft greens and the limes and a little bit of blue in there, and it just gives you that lovely calming effect.
We had a 6-week period where we didn't have a drop of rain in May and June, and now it hasn't stopped. So we've gone from almost drought conditions to way too much water.
Very slow to start off with, and things have not really ripened as much as some of the apples haven't got as big. It slowed down when it was dry, and then we've had it wet, and they've caught up a little bit, but not as much. And the things haven't ripened. Pears haven't ripened. The apple hasn't got to the biggest size. We had all that dry when the fruit's sort of starting off. The blossom was all right, it didn't get frosted. We had a lot of June drop, so all the little ones fell off, and then we dare not, you thin them.
We had a bit of a surge in membership, particularly during the pandemic. I think everyone was trying to grow their own vegetables to keep themselves busy, but also to overcome the shortages that were available at the time, and I think that's going to continue as a trend.
There are 8 allotment sites in the Taunton area. Most of them are what we call direct managed. There aren't enough allotments. The demand for allotments over the last 5 years has increased exponentially. There are loads of people wanting them, waiting lists are growing all the time. The whole allotment movement is changing, and younger people have got different priorities for allotment sites, and it's possible part of the need will be met by having smaller allotment plots. People don't want the traditional 10 perch or 10 rod allotment site, which is 250 square metres. So I think plot sizes will come down in size.
Some of our members are big into exhibiting at shows, and we can give them tips on how to prepare for shows, how to stage exhibits, and how to grow things. And certain varieties are better for exhibition than others. And also give them tips on how to just grow vegetables in general. If you grow potatoes in the ground, you will never get a nice shaped potato on a generally very good quality skin which is required for exhibition. What you want to do is grow them in a bucket or in a plastic pot, which will allow you to control their conditions, keep them well watered. If they dry out, the skins get very rough, or they can split if they're watered irregularly. But if you keep them in a container, you can control their conditions better, and you will end up with a much better potato to start off with for showing.
Here at Taunton Flower Show, we have a show garden competition, and this year we've got 5 very different show gardens. They have 5 days in which to build a garden. They have chosen their theme beforehand. They're no bigger than 4 by 5 metres, so they're not very big gardens. And the idea is to give our visitors an idea of what they can achieve in a small space. So here is our first gardener. Her name is Julie Haylock.
So my garden is called Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, and it showcases plants which are ideal for pollinating insects within the garden. So I've used a selection of plants including a monarda, nepeta and phlox, which all are rich in nectar. So we've got Winnie the Pooh in the back of the garden in a silver birch tree, perched high up in the branches, having used his blue balloon to float up into the trees to steal the honey from the bees. And then below in the garden, we've got a beehive surrounded by Winnie the Pooh's friends. We've got Tigger in front of the beehive, Eeyore sat on the bench at the back, and we've got Piglet on a ladder climbing up the silver birch. And today, certainly, the youngsters have thoroughly enjoyed finding all the different characters within the garden, and the height of the border is just perfect for them to lean into the garden and find the bees and the characters.
Well, here's our next garden, and this has been created by the designer Edward Prowse.
So our garden is called Trees, the air we breathe. So that we've tried to culminate 2 aspects of this garden. We wanted to showcase the royal coronation, and we wanted to showcase our sister company, Trees for Good Causes. We've gone from the tree aspects, from growing and shelter, to the edible side of things, how we build our gardens and how they're so useful in creating carbon sinks and the sustainability with it. We're also showcasing the different styles of timber and their colours and the prowess of everything. And then we've gone through that with a coronation theme. So the paving shows the Westminster Abbey, which the king would have gone through when he was coronated. He'd have been led through the benches, which is where the lord and ladies would sit as he went to the throne. The 3-tier decking at the back is what he would have been sat on when he was coronated, and the throne is somewhere to sit and admire your garden once you've championed and gone through the lovely colours. So we've gone for a blue and white planting scheme here with the touch of purple for the royal etiquette. We are in a very small garden here, and yet we've got quite a lot in this garden, a lot of places to sit and a lot of colours and plants to enjoy. So even if you've got a really nice small garden, there is still a huge scope and possibility of what you can and can't do.
So now we move to our third garden, and I'd like to introduce Rick Johnson, and he has created this beautiful garden called Wonder.
The garden is based on the relationship I had with my younger brother, who sadly took his own life 4 years ago. So I wanted to create something that was sort of the inspiration that he provided me, and a slight comment on mental health. So the garden's designed to move through. So it's kind of guarded at the front, and as you move through it, the walls kind of slowly collapse into a little bit of chaos and disarray, but to indicate that there's still beauty amongst all of that, hence the kind of distressing of the wood, the burning of it, Just wanted to indicate that perhaps like when something is slightly damaged, it's not necessarily ugly, there can be some beauty within it. The garden was designed to be a journey that you could move through, and when you meandered round or wandered round to this point and sat down on the swing's an acknowledgement to my brother and the time we spent as children together and as adults, just kind of shooting the breeze and amateur philosophising. The idea being is that you can look back over this garden and realise that you are more than the sum of your parts, and perhaps within all of the distress and chaos there's a lot of beauty that you can see as well.
This is our fourth garden, and this is a garden that's been created by Fon Cousins.
I'm a willow and wine sculptor, so I created this garden just to showcase my willow work, artwork. This year I just inspired by lovely flowers, colours, so I want to put them together as a bit of colourful garden and showcase my Harlequin willow. The willow is local from Somerset. It comes from wetlands, about 20 miles from here, I think, isn't it?
And the Harlequin, Fon, is that to do with the shape of the sculptures, the diamonds?
The diamonds, yeah. So that's been, the Harlequin is some kind of, the word mean that you put stick together and weave them together. So it can be anything, because I love willow, and a lot of people use willow to do the Harlequins. And I think willow is a Somerset well-known grower as well.
So,
it's sent all over the world, so people buy it from the wetland.
One thing about the willow also is it's living, isn't it, Fon? Even when you're using it, when it's planted, it will go on growing?
It's growing. The willow is, when you cut them, if they're still fresh, you can put them back, and then they will grow back again. So they're living willow. Most of my work are living willow.
This is our fifth garden, and I'd like to introduce the designer for this garden. She's called Sally Leaney, and I have to say Sally has created wonderful gardens at Taunton Flower Show with great success for a considerable time, and this year she once again has taken the trophy for the best show garden.
The idea behind the garden was I'm often being asked by clients to what are the right plants to grow? Should we be having a hosepipe ban? So in other words, drought-tolerant plants. And people seem to be desperate for shade in the garden. It's a drought-tolerant garden, and we've also put in some very smart water butts, because the whole principle of collecting water makes absolute sense. All the planting is drought-tolerant and would cope very well without being watered. The colours are predominantly blue and yellow, and purples, and the yellow seems to just give an absolute zing to the purples and the blues, which are lovely. It's definitely more extremes. Although we joke and say it's been a wet July, June was incredibly hot, and I think plants have been under enormous pressure. Some of those temperatures in February and March were really cold, so plants are having to put up with an awful lot of extremes these days. But I think we need to be matching our plants to these higher temperatures that seem to be happening, and really having to have a garden that can only be supported by water just doesn't seem right in today's way.